I'm Pat Torres. Welcome to The Story. Of course, you've heard the historic news by now. Former President Donald Trump found guilty on all 34 felony counts of his criminal hush money trial. Now, we don't usually cover national news on this program, but this is a big deal, big enough for a short deviation from our norm. It's the first of Trump's 4 indictments to reach the trial, and he's the first former U.S. president ever convicted of felony crimes. Sentencing now is set for July 11th. And whether you voted for him before or not, the news today really is a big deal, especially considering the upcoming election. Those details will be covered ad nauseum, I think, for the next few months. I just wanted you to know that we know. All right, let's get back to what we do best, local news. The city of Portland sent out thousands of letters last week claiming that people didn't pay a pair of newer taxes meant to fund homeless services and preschool. The problem? Many of them had paid, and now they're spending hours on the phone trying to clean up the mess. It's the latest wrinkle in these taxes, which had a similar problem last year. Here's investigative reporter Kyle Leboshi.
The city of Portland is dealing with an onslaught of phone calls, emails, and angry messages after sending nearly 12,000 demand letters to high-earning taxpayers. The notice of debt claims people failed to pay a pair of new taxes meant to fund homeless services and preschool. Problem is, many people did pay, including Philip Greenberg.
We're jumping through the hoops trying to be in compliance, and then you get a letter saying you owe money, right, to the tune of thousands of dollars. So you can imagine, pretty frustrating.
The letters claimed Greenberg and his wife owed the Supportive Housing Services tax and Preschool for All tax for 2023. Additionally, the city added penalties and fees for non-payment. Greenberg said they'd already paid the taxes through employer withholdings and had the records to prove it.
In my opinion, it's more than likely that something was wrong with the processes versus what we did.
Numerous other people have contacted KGW with similar experiences despite having paid the taxes. There are also postings on social media from confused taxpayers. One person wrote, "Unreal how they handle taxes." Another said, "I cannot believe how much money these taxes generate, only to be handled in such an amateur hour fashion." The city of Portland, which was contracted by Metro and Multnomah County to collect the taxes, declined an on-camera interview. In a statement, Thomas Lanham, the interim chief financial officer for the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services, wrote, "The debt notices being received by Multnomah County and Metro taxpayers are not an error. They accurately reflect penalties and interest owed for underpaid taxes." Lanham went on to explain employers don't always withhold the full amount due, and like with federal and state taxes, the taxpayer is ultimately responsible to ensure they meet this requirement. The voter-approved personal income taxes only apply to individuals who made more than $125,000 annually, or couples who bring in more than $200,000 combined. The confusing letters are just the latest misstep in rolling out the new tax program. Last year, Metro and Multnomah County waived all penalties and interest for the taxes after fierce public outcry. A KGW investigation found many taxpayers had no idea the taxes were overdue until they received a letter demanding payment along with penalty and interest.
We can't even tie it off with a bow and be done with it. You know what I mean? It keeps cropping up to bite us.
Kyle's with me now. So, okay, what do people do if they get these things?
Right. The city says you can email them or you can call. If you call, though, be prepared to wait. I've talked to a lot of people who said they waited hours. In fact, they got into the queue. They were number 100, 185, having to wait and wait and wait to actually talk to a customer service representative.
Now they know what the people who are trying to get to the unemployment division feel like. All right, and then is there any chance the city's just going to waive these fees like they did last year?
Good question. It's one of several questions I asked them today. In fact, I emailed about 10 different questions looking for some answers. We actually wanted an on-camera interview here and was really frustrated that we weren't able to get that.
Sure.
Or get answers for people because people are looking for answers. Yeah. They're going onto the website, Department of Revenue, and reading through all this. In fact, I spent quite a bit of time today trying to understand it myself. It's confusing. It's complex. And again, these are higher earners, right? These are smart people.
Yeah.
And they're telling me, I can't figure it out.
Yeah. So it means it's the system that's broken, and they need to communicate a lot better with you and with the public.
Definitely.
Get on it, folks. Thanks, Kyle. All right, now I know many of you have thoughts about this. Share them with us, will you? You could send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. We enjoy those as well. 503-226-5090. Now, in the city of Portland, we're just a month away from the beginning of a switchover to the new form of government. Now, the legal change doesn't really officially happen until January, but the folks running the show, they want to start practicing now. They worry that waiting until January to try all this is going to be an invitation for disaster. So tonight we're going to look at how the new budget, which also starts July 1st, is going to help bring that change. First, in case you've not been following along, here's a quick recap. Voters in Portland have said enough of the antiquated form of government we've had for more than 100 years. It allowed the 4 commissioners and the mayor to actually run specific bureaus in the city. And that did not work so well. The structure allowed the bureaus to become walled off from each other, creating silos, controlled only by that commissioner. They didn't have to play nice with other city bureaus or even listen to the direction of the mayor. So you could see that's kind of a recipe for dysfunction, huh? Over the years, the bureaus created their own communication teams, asset management teams, human resource teams, technology teams, and more. But that will change officially January 1st of 2025, and long before that, like July 1st, the city will start that soft launch of the new system. Under the new system, nearly all the bureaus are grouped into 6 areas, overseen by deputy city administrators, and then above them, a city administrator. The interim city administrator right now is Mike Jordan. I talked with him recently about the changes.
If you look at our budget that starts on July 1st, not only are there a whole bunch of numbers, but there probably will be about 20 budget notes. And those are instructions from the governing body when they adopt the budget to us, the management, on look at a whole bunch of things. And we've got this is more budget notes than we usually have. And I think it is, I think it's a result of where we are in time.
Well, I checked and I couldn't find 20, but I definitely did find 15. And the very first one is for something called the Impact Reduction Program, which is a fancy name for Portland's program to clean up homeless sites. The budget note shows costs for this program have increased 300% over the past 3 years. The note directs the leaders to work with the new deputy city administrators to get those costs under control and to look for new ways to pay for the program. So it's an example of what he's talking about. Here's another one. It tells all the city bureaus to work together to share data. One example, improving the collection, use, analysis, and sharing of data within and across the city service areas to implement the charter reform. And there's more, lots more. But you get the idea. With the new structure, that charter reform, the budget is being used to create new ways to run the city. And those new ways will hopefully make it more efficient and responsive to you, the public, and the taxpayers. Now, Jordan, the interim city administrator whose job it is to turn the city's massive ship of bureaucracy, well, he says that budget is a powerful tool.
The intersection of the transition and all of the change we're talking about, and a challenging budget year. Those things, the intersection of those things has brought up a whole bunch of ideas about things we ought to look at. And if you look at them, they're mostly good ideas. Can we do them all at once? It makes me a little scared for the next year, but we'll do the best we can to get after those questions, because they're good questions to ask.
And sometimes tight budgets or issues like this bring up the opportunity to say, sorry fellas, we got to do this.
You are absolutely right. And the nice thing about having the governing body give you that specific direction is you can hold it up to the bureaucracy and say, hey, we got to do this. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, it's got this date in it, and I've got to have it done by that date. So that's really, it is a benefit to, a chief executive in a public agency.
And that's exactly who he is. So Jordan is going to use the orders from the city council to change a lot of things. Remember, with Portland's unique form of government, the old one that's about to go away, nearly every bureau has become a silo with no incentive to cooperate. So the change in charter, which kicks in January 1st, is going to require those silos to come down. Jordan and his team will step in July 1st and slowly begin transitioning the system to the city to that new system. And there will be a couple of new bureaus, by the way, like the one that's going to take care of all the city's stuff called asset management. Is that the type of thing you're going to start doing on July 1st? You're going to start looking at
all these different disciplines, the officers. There's a office in the org chart that says asset management on it. We don't have an asset management office right now, and yet we have multiple bureaus that manage multiple asset classes. And quite frankly, we've got some bureaus that do, well, we've got one bureau that does really well. The Water Bureau is very good at asset management. We have a few bureaus that are pretty good at it. And then we have a few bureaus that, I like to say they're wandering for food and shelter out in the wilderness. They're kind of Maslow's hierarchy. And so what we need to do with that office is talk about to ourselves, basically, what do we need from an asset management office? Is it people who just set the standard of practice, advocate for maturing the places where it's not so mature?
And assets is that cars and trucks?
No,
or is it buildings?
Well, cars and trucks are an asset, but it's buildings, it's HVAC systems, it's also sewer and water pipes, it's also water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants, 100 pump stations in the wastewater system, every mile of roadway, sidewalk, parks, assets, and community centers, and
pools and things.
And all kinds of, they're all assets. And we've got lots of classes of assets, and historically, they've been managed bureau by bureau.
In that silo.
Yeah. And then it comes to city council, and they need to think about, all right, what are our capital maintenance priorities? If we were going to go to the voters for a bond issue, which asset class would we ask them for? And, so trying to figure out the priorities when it's done bureau by bureau by bureau is challenging. So one of the ideas with this asset management group is they're currently put in the city operations. Makes sense. But if you were thinking about part of their duties to be capital maintenance planning, then they might be better over in the budget shop and doing the capital version of asset planning. So a lot of questions, and we're going to go through those and try to make the place run better. That's the job.
Now that is an example of a big issue. The budget note for assets shows the city has $80 billion worth of stuff, but there's no centralized way to track what's happening with it right now. Under the new system that Jordan's setting up, though, there will be. So again, he hopes to get a handle on things like all the city's assets and to use those budget notes to tackle tough issues like why the cost of cleaning up homeless camps is going up so fast. I also wanted to know how he's going to use a new layer of bureaucracy with this new government structure. Those are the deputy city administrators.
As your viewers may say, it's kind of expensive and it's a new layer of management and bureaucracy. Well, okay, how do we take advantage of that and start to pull those things up and examine them and make them more efficient and more effective? And what role do those offices play in that? And I think it could be a huge role. I think it might be kind of the golden key of being able to change the way we've always done it into the way we should do it in the future.
So will the deputies be in, that morning, walk in, and they'll be in a room with the meetings? Hi, everybody. The deputy's the new one in charge from now on?
Interestingly enough, as you might expect for the city of Portland, we're doing things a little uneven. The commissioners have appointed these folks. Some of them are in their role right now. The commissioner has said, I want you to start now. And I want you to begin having those meetings with all the directors and going to staff meetings and getting familiar with them. So some of them have started. The mayor has said, you start on July 1. And so officially now we're getting together, we've been meeting, we're trying to figure out, okay, who are we and what are we going to do? What's the work plan? And then we will shop that work plan, draft work plan with the directors on May 23rd. I want to get them on board because we'll need them to be effective. So get them on board, kind of get us all rowing in the same direction about what we're going to do for the next year, and then execute starting July 1.
It's going to be interesting.
You're smirking at me, Pat. It will be interesting.
I'm smiling in admiration that you're shouldering this.
It will be, well, thank you for that, but great teams. I've been working with the directors for almost 2 years preparing for this. So the directors have been working on this. This is not new. They know it's coming. They were the ones who helped formulate the structure. So we've been prepping for a couple of years for July 1 and getting ready to start practicing in earnest.
I got to say, I really do enjoy interviewing Mike Jordan. He knows what he's talking about. He talks like a normal person. He answers questions. I wish other people would do that. By the way, one of the first changes Portland is doing is simplifying its unwieldy permit process for buildings. It drives a lot of people crazy. Yesterday, the City Council approved grouping most of the permit and development folks into one large bureau with about 350 people. That new structure for permits and development kicks in on July 1st. It's going to be fascinating. What do you think about it? Are you as fascinated as I am? We're going to have more with Mike Jordan next week. As you'd guess, there's a lot to cover here. It's a historic change. First time in 100 years we've done this. Email your thoughts to us, will you? The address again, thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Up next on The Story, the final installment of our series this week, looking at extremist hate groups in the Northwest. Tonight we answer the question, what can we as a community do to fight back against these groups? That's coming up next when The Story returns. Tonight we finish up our series on extremist hate groups in the Northwest, particularly in Idaho. We've explored their history and what drives people to join those groups. Tonight, what can we as a community do to keep those hateful groups and their messages from spreading? Justin Core from our sister station in Boise has the story.
So it always starts with us individually.
Christina Bruce Benyon, the executive director of the Wasma Center for Human Rights, says the fight against hate groups starts in our own backyards.
How are we educating ourselves? How are we taking a stand? How are our voices being heard? And then it's that sphere of influence. And then how do we join those voices across a community, across a state, across a region?
And we need to get to work right away because experts say people's lives are on the line.
White supremacist ideology, if left unchecked, always ends in violence.
It's violence Idahoans have seen far too much of in the past few months and years. Tony McAleer knows all too well who might be recruited to violent extremist groups. He's the author of the book, The Cure for Hate, and helps communities respond to the threat of violent white supremacist groups he was once a part of.
Most people think it's the ideology that draws people in, but the ideology is really, and research has shown this, the ideology is really secondary.
So if that is secondary, what's the primary reason for people to join these hate groups? Well, McAleer says people are looking for acceptance.
If you think about the loneliness and the despair and the craving for community and belonging and acceptance, very, very powerful.
Which is why the U.S. Attorney for the District of Idaho, Josh Hurwitz, says isolation is one of the big red flags that someone you may know is being radicalized.
But everyone should look out for their family members, their colleagues, their coworkers. If you're seeing a change of behavior or a withdrawal from sort of what we'd consider normal society, see what might be possible in a safe way to try to get that person the support that they might need.
But just because someone is withdrawing doesn't mean they're being radicalized. Could be a sign of mental health challenges. Also, not everyone who uses violent rhetoric does in fact turn violent, but it is often a precursor to violence. And Dr. Royce Hudson, a violent extremism researcher at Boise State, says other behaviors are often paired with that.
If they're stockpiling guns and ammo, that kind of stuff, that would be very concerning.
So if we see all those red flags and try to help, how hard is it to un-radicalize someone? McAleer says very hard.
And it wasn't just the ideas in my head, it was who I was. It was my whole identity. When you're trying to help someone out of it, it's not just about changing the ideas in their head, it's changing their whole identity.
And McAleer stresses that in trying to bring someone out of a hateful ideology, we have to understand what motivated them into that in the first place. He says it's often shame from trauma, which turns to self-hate and then hatred of other groups. But again, it all starts with a foundation of shame. So what we cannot do is shame people out of it.
Toxic shame is at the root of the hatred. More shame can't possibly be the answer. There's often pain or grievance that's legitimate, looking for a solution to hang itself on. And these conversations and stuff can be required courage. So we talk a lot about curiosity, courage, and compassion.
McAleer calls it radical compassion because while we all should be disgusted by these hate groups' ideologies, we cannot use their tactics to hate the people in them. Hate speech is hate speech, even if it's directed at hateful people. Also, it's exactly what they want.
These terrorist groups are trying to actually cleave the communities. That's their stated goal. I mean, remember, they want to start a revolution. And you start a revolution by separating people out. I mean, it's on purpose. So if you're targeting a particular group, the hope is that they overreact and say, well, all white people are like this, and so we're going to create this race war.
So if that's what not to do, what do we actually do? Hurwitz says agencies across the board are getting much more efficient at getting justice for victims. So they all want you to report hate crimes. That can start, as Hurwitz calls it, a virtuous cycle where victims feel more comfortable reporting, they see justice done, and then others feel more empowered to also stand up and report hate crimes. But he says first, we all need to let everyone know where we stand.
The first thing as just a citizen is to stand up against this, to call it out and to say this is not acceptable, this is not what our community represents, it's not what we're about, and it's frankly inconsistent with the Constitution.
The majority of people in Idaho, I would say sometimes the silent majority, needs to get more vocal and more engaged.
Get those kids!
Hudson says communities that take proactive measures, are welcoming to everyone, and have a strong sense of social capital are more resilient to violent extremism.
Communities can make a difference.
And McAleer knows that if our community makes the choice to offer a place for everyone to belong, people don't have to get that belonging from hate groups. Hopefully those groups can wither away.
The ego sees the world through the lens of separation, black and white. The heart sees the world through the lens of connection and sort of bringing people together. As human beings, we can live from a place of fear or love. And when we're conscious of that, we get to choose which that is.
Well, we crammed this half hour, and so that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching, but remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. The good stuff's coming your way next. I'm taking tomorrow off, but the team has some great content lined up for you. I hope that you'll join them tomorrow night at 6:30, and I'll see you right back here, Monday night, 6:30.